Hi and welcome. I'm Geoff Colvin here with Christie Hefner, Mark King. We're here to talk business, and the newspapers have a lot to say about it this morning. Much of it challenging. The housing market looks like it's stalling again. That's the lead story in the Wall Street Journal. Stock market is right where it was 12 years ago. And as for the economy, this July, when people say double dip, they're not talking ice cream. So how is it that some companies are doing great? Apple reported profits yesterday through the roof. Luxury car sales are booming. So how come? Where does brand power come from? Why do some companies succeed through good times and bad? That's what we're going to talk about with Christie and Mark. I'll be talking with them for a bit, and then we're going to invite questions from you, and they'll be responding to those. So let's get started. Mark, starting with news, you recently announced that your company, TaylorMade, is now #1 in golf equipment. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
The bigger picture is you've been running a company in an industry that's actually shrinking. And it's not just a recession thing. Golf equipment is shrinking, and yet you have tripled sales. What's the secret?
All leadership, Geoff. I don't know. It's certainly not one thing. I think there's luck involved in it.
But it can't be much luck.
No, but I think there's a lot of luck. But I think it starts with what we focus on is more about focusing on the opportunities, no matter what the environment looks like or what it feels like. That even in a down market, some companies are rising, some companies are falling, and we've decided we're going to be one of those companies that grows, even if the economy and the marketplace is challenging.
Well, 10 years ago, TaylorMade was a pretty small player, and you were up against some really big players, right? So how did you make people believe that they had a chance, that they could actually take share away from these other players and become the biggest?
Yeah. I think that's really what happened at our company is somehow we were able to make a group of people believe that something could really be different than the way it was in the past.
Right.
And so we put a big dream out there. We said we want to become the best performance golf brand in the world. And at the time, we were a distant #3. And our competitors laughed at us, the industry laughed at us, our employees thought we were crazy. But we just said, we don't know if we're going to get there, we don't know when we're going to get there, we don't know how we're going to get there. But we got to have something bigger than coming in every day and doing your functional job and going to work every day. So we wanted to give people some sense of hope or that things could really be different. And so we tried to create an environment of believers so that extraordinary things might be able to happen.
And called for extraordinary things to happen, a big, bold dream.
Yeah, it was not just a little dream. It was, we're going to go from not even being a real competitor to being the biggest competitor. And this year, like you said in the opening, we've realized that. So it's been an incredible 10-year run, but it's not been about functional execution. It's been more about thinking about how things could be different and challenging the status quo and being out there on the edge and really not only reinventing ourselves, but helping reinvent a category.
Right. Well, we're going to want to talk more about that, fundamentally rethinking the business, because that's what more and more of us are having to do. Christie, in the news also, the company you ran for so many years, Playboy Enterprises, is in the news because your dad has bid to buy the stock he doesn't already own. There's a competing bidder who is bidding even more. What's striking to me in all of this is that the competing bidder said what he values, actually, the reason he wants to buy it is the brand. The brand is so incredibly valuable. You were in charge of building that brand for 20 years. What was the most important thing that you learned about building a really powerful brand?
Well, I think it started with the vision that the most valuable asset the company had to leverage was the brand. And it goes back to the vision point that Mark was making, because the conventional process for a successful magazine to grow, whether it was Henry Luce in Time magazine or Jan Wenner in Rolling Stone, was you launch or buy other magazines. You leverage your knowledge of publishing magazines. And what we believed was with the advent of first cable and satellite TV, then the internet, then mobile, that the most valuable asset really that the company had was the brand that could be leveraged across media platforms and through licensing. And that vision was really what we organized the company around.
I gather that when you arrived as CEO, the brand, frankly, was not being well managed. Is that fair? And what did you see when you got there? And then what did you change?
Yes, I think that's true, because I think that sometimes even big brands wind up being in a culture where they're sort of taken for granted. And you know, I think maybe brands are like marriages. They have to constantly be nurtured.
Right.
And everything you do, I believe, impacts your brand. So it's a mistake to think that the only thing that impacts your brand is, let's say, your advertising.
Right.
It's your employees. It's the things you don't do. It's who your business partners are. It's where you sell your product. And it all comes from understanding what the personality of the brand is, which for Playboy was a kind of fun, sexy, sophisticated lifestyle. And for a lot of people, I think they don't start by understanding what their brand represents, because you have to understand that to find the way to extend the brand so that you understand the intersection between that brand attitude and any new business you're going to go into.
So you were able to think different, to think bigger about the brand.
Yes, and ultimately it's what publishing companies are all now doing, is they understand that they are brands and content that have to live beyond the pages of a newspaper, the pages of a magazine.
Right. And so then you were able to take it into places that no one had previously thought about taking it into.
Yes, right? we are actually the only magazine that has a successful television network around the world. We were the first magazine to go up on the web in '94. And those businesses are highly profitable at a time when print publishing is under all kinds of pressure, as you know very well.
That's for sure.
And then when I left, we'd built $1 billion business at retail of consumer products around the world through leveraging the brand.
And I gather that that business, licensing, is still the most profitable
It is
part
the
of
most profitable, and it'd be fair to say that the brand is bigger than the magazine.
Right, right. Talking about brands, TaylorMade has become a very powerful, successful brand, obviously, in your business. And you were quoted recently as saying, we have to make the sport cooler, we have to make our brand cool. Sounds great. How do you do it?
Don't know. No, just to go back to what Christie said, 10 years ago when our company kind of started on this journey, our brand didn't stand for anything. It was all over the board, which I think a lot of struggling companies with their brands, they do. They just, they try to fit it in out in.
Get it out everywhere.
Get it out everywhere. And so what we did is we came in and the brand was like this, and we just went very focused on serious golfers that want to play better golf. Our equipment would help them play better golf. And that's kind of, and we stay really very much in that lane and really fight going outside of that lane.
That's interesting because it might strike a lot of people as kind of counterintuitive. They say, gee, don't we want our brand to embrace as many possible customers as it can? And you said no.
Yeah, we did. And we said no not because we knew, we just didn't know any better. And we said, what do we know and what could we be to the golfer? And we have a basic belief that if we could be really relevant in the game of golf, which is in one little sector, which is serious golfers, that we could then start to expand that over time.
Because you need customers who are passionate about your brand.
Right.
In this world, you need people who are not just customers, but they're fans, and they have an engagement with it. And you're not going to get that, to Mark's point, if you just stretch it too thin.
Right. Right. So you focused on the serious golfer.
We did.
And I'm gathering it turned out that those are the people who, A, will spend the most money on clubs, and B, probably buy clubs most often, replace the clubs they've got. Yeah. Turned out to be a great segment.
Well, it turned out to be a great strategy. Again, we didn't know that it was going to win, but we really focused on having this brand advocate and owning a larger share of their wallet rather than trying to get a bigger share of the market. Our competitors thought that that was really ridiculous as they were trying to expand the breadth of their brand to bring in all golfers or all consumers, and we just went a different avenue because we actually thought we could do that. And then when we woke up, it was like, geez, this is kind of working, so that was awesome.
Right. Well, talking about building brands, I mean, a lot of people are wondering, okay, this is great. Now, you started building yours, well, I mean, TaylorMade started almost 30 years ago, but you started your strategy, what, 10 or so years ago. You started working and renovating and rebuilding the Playboy brand over 20 years ago. Suppose you were doing it today. Suppose you were trying to build a powerful brand from scratch today in a world of Twitter and Facebook and Google, and when the culture has ADD and you want to build a brand, how would you do it?
It's harder today, I think, precisely because there's more media clutter and more brand clutter. So it's just harder to build mind share compared to years ago. It's also harder because I think you have to give up a certain amount of control, which didn't used to be true. You used to be able to build a business model where the brand was sort of at the center, and then you had, you know, your retail distribution and your direct marketing and your sales and your advertising. But now the consumer is in the center of that hub. And you see, particularly through social networking, that consumers are going to not just comment on your brand, they're actually going to morph it in some way. You see that. And you have to, I think, as a brand steward, which is what I always thought of myself as, sort of like the Native American saying that I'm a steward of the land and then it gets passed to the next generation. You have to be prepared for the fact that you can't be as command and control as you could before, which takes a different set of skills and a different culture. And some, in my experience, that's not a generational statement, because there are people of all generations who are remarkably adept at evolving and changing, and there are young people who are not.